My spirit is infinite. I don't waste moments on what's insignificant. Moments move different when you discipline. Silence teach lessons they never mention it. My bloodline needs healing. I'm reaching for magic beyond what's indigenous. Not just the drums or the rituals, but the knowing that live in the sinew and ligaments. I walk slow, but I ride.
Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome back to another round of My Patriot Report Live. I'm the bridge connecting the next generation to federal contracting. I am Twan Hill, and with me I have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ambassador of Peace. And if you don't know who he is by now, you might want to ask Google Gemini, Mr. Walter Cotton III. Mr. Cotton, man, how you doing on this? I don't know about New York, but this rainy Wednesday has been raining for like the past couple of days. How about you?
You know, it's been quite soggy on this coast as well, but I'm improving. I'm improving. Thank you for asking.
Of course. Now let's get into it. Now we talked about the Louisiana court case of their ruling of the district. Now it seems like it's a widespread epidemic, I guess you could say, going on down south, because now we have I seen something about Florida. Then now we're looking at a court ruling in Alabama, which actually was the exact opposite of what happened in Louisiana. They're saying that was intentionally racist. Now, what was your what did you interpret that to say in regards to this court ruling in the district?
You know, right now, our democratic process of selecting our representatives is out of control, right? It's just become extremely too partisan. People are more concerned about, you being uber left or uber right, as opposed to doing the people's business, as opposed to doing what's in the best interest of the American people. And so I think that my friend Sophia Nelson, I go back to her visionary stance in writing a book that's appropriate for this season, because we are at a inflection point where we need to reimagine our relationship with our electoral process. We need to reimagine our relationship with our judiciary. And it's your generation, quite candidly, that has the baton on this one, because what we're seeing out of the current electoral or democratic process is bizarro world. I mean, we're sitting in a situation fresh off of two primaries where elected officials, well respected in their communities, were unseated by a cult of personality. We should not have that kind of influence making decisions within our electoral process, within our democratic process. And I think that it's time that we do something about it. And I'm here to beat the drum and start the process of that something that needs doing.
Yes, sir. Now, how does this exactly affect how does that affect communities when they're making these cases of redistricting? Like, does it actually have a effect on voting, or is that pretty much obsolete because it's controlled by hierarchy versus the people actually vote matter? Does it translate with what they're doing into political power?
It really does. I mean, you have left versus right, Democrat versus Republican narrative out there, and how the money flows is a determinant of who wins the election. So it really does matter. Some people will say that it's the same stuff, different day. But I would say that it does matter whether or not you have people that are coming from the liberal left versus the conservative right in office. But at the end of the day, the place that I approach this from is a patriotic perspective, right? And whether you're leaning wrong left or leaning wrong right, you're still leaning wrong. And right now, our political infighting, our inability to pass balanced budgets, right, our inability to pass legislation that's in the utilitarian best interest of the people of these United States is representing a problem. And the problem is festering from our political system, our left versus right. And so what I'm imagining is a need for a reconciliation, right? I think we have a need to cause the left and the right to come into a room and sit down and be reminded of the fact that they are a part of a constitutional republic. And within this constitutional republic, the power still rests with the people. And the only way we're going to accomplish that is for we, the people, to grab our elected officials by the collar and hold them to account. And I think that our action to compel them to co-sponsor this bill is one of the few opportunities that we have in between election cycles to demonstrate the power of our constitutional republic. And we are in the process of doing that right now.
Yes, sir. Now you said that we need to get both parties in one room. How realistic do you really think that is? And I asked that question because we're so divided when it comes to left. It's kind of like a cult, if you ask me, from my perspective. But there is so much divide in between them, and even divide within parties. They have divisions. So, how realistic do you think it is that we could get everybody in one room and say, it's not about left or right, but it's actually about what affects Americans, and we're all Americans at the end of the day?
Well, if this was yesterday's time when we had, dial-up telephone or, Paul Revere riding on a pony, right, I would say that it would be a little bit more difficult to get enough people under the tent to create a consensus. But in today's environment, driven by social media, right, and our ability to collect in the electronic square, right, the electronic town hall, I think it's relatively easy to get a group together to provide a demonstration of the collective interest of we the people. And that's why we're going through an experiment right now of showing the people their power, right? There are a lot of people, and I'm hearing a lot of powerlessness in the podcast and the scrolls that I'm experiencing on Facebook and TikTok and the like. People are sounding as if they're defeated. There's a defeatist attitude. I'm hearing people talking about becoming expatriates, right? Going to other countries, leaving these United States of America. And that's like the craziest thing I could ever entertain. But I want to address that under a separate discussion. But we have the ability, because of these technology capabilities, to reach out and touch our congressmen and women in a way that matters. And so in this instance, what we're looking to do is deliver a olive branch of cooperation, an olive branch of opportunity to our political leaders by affording them the ability to demonstrate their patriotic commitment to their constituents. And we're doing that in the form of asking them to support a piece of right-minded legislation that we've been driving for the past 20 years that is no more relevant than it is right now when we're trying to reshore our manufacturing assets, shore up our supply chains, and make America economically safe again. And that is the statute that would create a whole of government contracting program for veteran-owned businesses. That piece of legislation is sitting in the ready position in the House Small Business Committee and the Senate Small Business Committee, right? What we are requiring, not requesting, what we are requiring our true elected patriotic leaders to do is to sign on as co-sponsors of that bill. That is a benign action that allows you to demonstrate to your constituents and us, the veteran voting bloc, your patriotic commitment to the Constitution, your patriotic commitment to your duty to your district, to your voters. If you do that, what we are sharing with you in one full and deep-throated voice is the fact that we will back your campaign during the midterm. We will back your campaign during the general, should you come into a need during that time. So here's the scenario that and the value proposition that we're delivering. We can demonstrate the functionality of our constitutional republic and our democratic system of electing true patriots to guide this country by having our congressmen and our senators go out and co-sponsor the Contract with Our Veterans Act and the Veteran Members Loan Act. Is that what it's called?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Veteran Member Business Loan Act. Yes, sir.
The Veteran Members Business Loan Act. You go out and sponsor that bill, Mr. Congressman. You go out and sponsor that bill, Mr. Senator, or Miss Congresswoman, Miss Senator, and you will get the backing of the veteran community during this upcoming midterm election. If you choose not to sponsor that bill, one of the unintended consequences of your name not showing up on the list is you're going to be signaling to the veteran constituents that we're talking to on a continuous and ongoing basis that you don't have the veterans back. That while we have men and women in harm's way in the Strait of Hormuz, you don't have the ability to give the level of attention necessary to cause your staffer to show your support for veterans. And we will reciprocate during the midterm election.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I did want to say big shout out to Representative Goodlander, Representative Adams, and Representative Kamek, who all supported the Veteran Member Business Loan Act. So big shout out to them. Now, my question is...
Can I stop you for a second before we go on? Because I know that those additional sponsorships are coming from some true patriots that are watching this program, that are reaching out to their congressmen, they're reaching out to their senators, and they're effectively causing them to sponsor or co-sponsor this legislation. Mm-hmm. We have a gift for you, right? We have a reward for you. If you were the veteran, or you were the true patriot that caused that member to co-sponsor, we need you to reach out to Mr. Hill. We need you to get in touch with Mr. Hill so that we can give you access to a $10,000 scholarship that we'd like to reward you with. So if you're able to prove to Mr. Hill that it was your communication with that congressman or that senator that caused him or her to co-sponsor that bill, you're going to get a $10,000 advantage that you can use for yourself, or you can share with another deserving family member that may be in need of wealth generation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I did want to ask this question. Do you think people are, disconnected from politics? Like, we know people left or right, but do they really understand the political process and what goes on? Or do you think that they just never been able to associate it to how it directly affects their life every day?
I think that by design, right, and I'm a little bit older than you, a little bit long in the tooth, rather. I think that by design, generations after me were dumbed down as it related to the civic process and how our electoral process works. We at least had Jailhouse Rock, right? And for those of you who are old enough to remember that song, I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill trying to become a law. That's how I learned how bills become laws. They had this little jingle called Schoolhouse Rock that they used to play during the cartoons when I was growing up. They're not doing that for your generation. And so I would assume that your generation doesn't understand the civic process as well as they need to understand it. And therefore, they don't appreciate the importance of their participation in the process. And so now when I say, I am going to compel the Congress to do something, your generation looks at me like I'm crazy. Like, who he think he is? You can't talk to Congress like that. Who are you to talk to the president like that? And the answer to the question is, I'm a citizen of these United States of America. I understand that I have the authority that's granted to me under the Constitution. So I have rights that I can discharge, and I'm discharging those rights. And so the average American, I think, has been distracted away from their authority and ability, and our elected officials know that.
Mhm.
I think our elected officials have seen the migration away from participating in the process anything other than election day, and they are using that. They're leveraging this to create a cult of personality experience during every election cycle. And they'll gin up the, dogs with the skirts and riding the unicycle tutus to get your attention, to hopefully get you to pull the lever. They'll promise you anything because they know you're not going to reconcile it and hold them accountable during the next election cycle. So what we need is we need to redouble our efforts to educate ourselves to our rights and our powers under this constitutional republic, and we need to leverage those rights and those powers towards securing the things that we want out of our elected officials. Right, this idea that we're powerless to the whims of an executive branch that's out of control, that's just unconstitutional. Right,
Mhm.
that does not comport with the
Mhm.
Constitution. Right, we have mechanisms in place. Should any branch of government, the judiciary, the legislative branch, the executive branch, if they get out of control, our Constitution gives us a mechanism to quarantine them until we can replace them.
Mhm.
But most Americans have been dumbed down to that idea, and therefore, the younger generations are not indexing at the level that we need them to index in the voting booth. And in this season, we have such a critical inflection point that we are required to react. We are required to engage against this kind of evidence, right? The Constitution empowers us with the ability to defend ourselves against threats, both foreign and domestic. Well, when you have a situation where the economic condition in this country has been turned so upside down, to have the misery quotient be so great that so many of our young people lament on a daily basis that they can't afford to live. They can't afford to. Let me just say this. I've been plugging into this new video series of these young people that are talking about working quasi professional and professional positions full time and not being able to afford to live. I watched this and this just blew my mind because I'm coming from a different America. I watched this report of a young lady who said she had just done a double in the operating room. Now, I don't care how you slice it. If you're in the operating room from my neighborhood, you're getting paid, right? You're somebody that's getting paid if you're in the operating room. But she said that she had just done a double in the operating room and she was doing the video from her car where she was doing Uber Eats on the side to make ends meet. That is crazy. That is crazy in one of the richest countries in the world to have that kind of a dynamic where, we wax sentimentally about the upper K and the lower K and the, dismantling of the middle class as if it doesn't affect us. All of this stuff affects us. If one American suffers, all Americans are experiencing that pain. And we need to get back to being the kinder, gentler America that I grew up in. I don't know. How did I get down that rabbit hole?
Well, that was a perfect segue. That was a perfect segue because I wanted to talk about my generation and your perspective, because when you talk about our generation working 3 jobs from a profession that probably makes well over 6 figures. Okay, realistically, I look at it from different perspectives. Like, what type of lifestyle is she living that she has to work 3 jobs? Because I'm quite sure she could still live comfortable. But then I don't know. I don't know if she live in New York or Cali, it may be justified.
But it's not just a matter of if she lives in New York or Cali. It's where she lives in the consumer index of her mind. True. Right? How much of her mind real estate has Madison Avenue purchased? How much of a consumer is she, right? Or he, right? Do they have to have the latest style, or are they comfortable with a pair of pants, right? And so, are they keeping up with the Joneses, trying to keep up appearances, as opposed to recognizing that, my telephone has got the time on it. So I don't need that $20,000, right? I don't need that super uber duper watch. As a matter of fact, I remember a young man said that to me one day, and from that day forward, I never wore a watch again. And I've got a collection of watches. I like automatic watches, so I got a collection of automatic watches that are out of this world. But I don't need the time is on my phone. Right, and I carry this everywhere I go. So the logic that made that watch relevant no longer operates with me, and therefore I'm off of the consumer treadmill of the Patty Philippe, the Rolex, I'm off of that treadmill. So it's a function of how much real estate Madison Avenue has captured in the mind of the individual to know whether or not they can live comfortably within the salary that they earn.
And when you say that, and when you say that, what I go into, that clearly must be another thing that's by design, just like not understanding the political process. That it just seems like all of this just plays hand in hand, and with what we call dumb it down America, to the point where, like you said, our generation, because I can even speak for myself, where before I interfaced with you, I didn't understand that the legal process or any of that. I was pretty much like, voting don't matter. And then I'm finding out now, as I mature and go through this process, like, yeah, your vote matters. And in fact, you do have the power to control and dictate how things go. But my question is, okay, is that also the reason why you think the younger generation, our generation, is moving? Because they don't understand that this is a country where we have the freedom to do whatever we want, but because they don't know that, they think their only option is to go to a different country where our dollar goes further.
It's a function of being able to think critically and independently for yourself, right? Most people in your generation were taught to join. They were taught to become a part of the collective, a part of the group. And groupthink became more important than what you thought independently and individually. And therefore, you've got a population out there right now that is not able to independently and critically divide the data that's coming at them. And so they are stuck in this personal knowledge prison. And what I mean by that is they're getting information from their favorite source, CNN, Fox, or whatever, and they think that what they understand is something that is just personal to them. They don't recognize that the other people that are watching CNN, for example, right, have that same belief system. So the understanding that there is more common knowledge, there's more common shared belief than there is polarized individualism is something that we don't understand. So therefore, when we see something that doesn't make sense, we're afraid to speak out. I'll give you a perfect example that's in the popular media today, and we talked about it in one of our previous podcasts, and that is this $1.8 billion slush fund that the administration is looking to dole out. The people that are looking at this thing from both the left and the right recognize that there's nothing right about this, right? As a matter of fact, depending on how you look at it, some of this could look like self-dealing, right? Which would be unethical at a minimum. In worst case scenario, it's untoward. But the people that have the private knowledge don't know the other people have the private knowledge. So they're afraid to say that out loud. They're afraid to say something. And so someone needs to break the tie. Someone needs to say out loud that it is not right to attempt to circumvent the Constitution in this way, because that is exactly what's happening if we unpack this action, right? This is a violation of the Impoundment Act at a minimum, right? Before we start talking about the unconstitutional considerations, we talk about the illegalities of it, right? So again, there are a number of people out there with the personal knowledge that this is stupid, right? That this is unfair, it's illegal, but they don't know because we're not talking across platforms to each other that it's a common shared belief. And let me be the first to break the tie if you haven't heard it from both sides, right? This is wrong, right? This is just plain old absolutely wrong. And every red-blooded patriot should do everything within their power to stop it. It is inappropriate for the executive branch, who does not have the power of the purse, to try to leverage the power of the purse in this fashion. And then if you look at the other underlying conditions and concessions that this Justice Department gave this president and all of his businesses, you see what stinks, right? Like forever, America can take no action against this president and any of his businesses and any of his family businesses for time immemorial. Who's going to sign up to something like that? Nobody in their right mind.
I guess that's the question, though, right? Because are we, dealing with the cult of personality, and like you said, Americans have been dumbed down so much that even the people who are in charge don't necessarily think for themselves or come to a reasoning that this is not that this isn't right. So do you think that could be the problem, that we just got a bunch of puppets?
Yes, that's absolutely the problem from an elected official perspective. Yeah. But that is not the problem from a we the people perspective, right? The American people are not puppets. And I've been listening to a lot of people that are counting America out because of the error, the faux pas that this administration has made in the Middle East. And I will admit that what has been done was stupid. To attack Iran was stupid. And what we're going to produce as a misery quotient for people across the globe is unfair, and we need to beg forgiveness for. But, you know, don't get it twisted. You know, this is still America, right? America is not a failed nation. America is not a failing nation. And if I'm ever going to bet on anything, I'm going all in on America and Americans, right? And so this too shall pass, right? You know, we will weather this storm. You know, it's stupid for this administration to be draining our oil reserves, right? To try to prop up the price of oil because of the lunacy that they have going on over in the Strait of Hormuz. But that's okay, right? Because this is America, right? You know, we Americans will adapt and we will conquer this situation. And oh, by the way, we know that you're a lame duck president, right? We know that you and all of your cronies are going to be out of here. How did you used to say it when you were on television? You're fired, right? We understand that that date is coming and we will recover from that. So I don't want anybody that's in this country to be concerned about America long term, right? We've got the resources that we need, we've got the ingenuity, we've got the people. All we need is to wake up from this hypnotic and trained nightmare that they've got us operating in, thinking that they are in charge. They are not. They serve at our discretion, and we need to get control of the reins so that we can reorder this ship, right? We can right this boat and get it pointed in the right direction.
Now, okay, so does this go into terms when it comes to inflation? And I asked this because I remember now we had different presidents, right? But inflation has always kept going up. I haven't seen. I never in my lifetime. I don't know about you. You're older than me, but I have yet to see something a price that was say $2 and go to $2.30. I never seen it go back down to that $2. It seems like as I got older, the prices just kept going up and up and up. So it's not really just a president, but it seems like we have a bigger problem in America. Especially if the youth my age is talking about working 3 jobs. You only got 24 hours in a day, so you working more jobs, make the same amount of money. Really not, really not effective in my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but that's a policy-based issue, right? You know, policies are what lead to inflation.
Okay.
Right? Because you have more weight that has to lean on that dollar that each individual earns. And so those costs have to go to pay for social goods, right? That cause the price of everything else to go up, right? There are a number of reasons why we have the kind of inflation that we're looking at. Now, I'm no economist, so all of you that are economists out there, they're gonna be like, that's not the exact well, okay. You're invited on the show to give us the dissertation on inflation, but the underlying catalyst is policy, right? You know, there are nations that have a different policy in terms of, how they utilize the energy, because that's what we're taking from the citizens. And some of them pour that energy into the military industrial complex, right? To create bullets and bombs that stay on the shelf. Others, pour that money in innovation, in creating the ability to be, better suppliers to the world. And so the kind of inflation that they experience in their country is different. That's a policy-based issue that we can get control of if we engage, if we have the audacity the unmitigated gall to believe that we have the power. I've been utilizing the Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz analogy a lot lately because I think that it applies here, right? You know, Dorothy always had the power, right? And the power wasn't in the ruby red slippers, but that was her muse, right? And the wicked witch, or should I say the good witch, Glinda the good witch, told her that she just needed to click her heels together 3 times and say, I want to go home, right? We don't need to click our heels together because we have the power, we have the resources. We just need to decide to use it. And what my team is trying to do is we're trying to, you know how you prime the pump when you're trying to get water out of the well? We're trying to prime the pump by reminding you of your power and your authority. And we want to remind you with this simple exercise, help us reward him and her who has borne the battle. And we can reward him by giving them the same benefit that I enjoy. I'm a veteran. I bore the battle and I got injured. So I'm a disabled veteran, and they've given me a contracting program so that I could self-determine and enjoy more of the American dream for and with my family. We need to give that same benefit to every man that put his hand over his heart and his other hand on the Bible and swore the oath to defend this country. And we need you to help us deliver that, right? You simply need to go out and contact your congressman or your senator and ask them to co-sponsor this bill. If you do that part, one, you put yourself in line to get a $10,000 gift that can make you rich. But 2, you put yourself in a position to demonstrate that we still have a functional democracy. We have a constitutional republic that works for us. So, you ready? Get set. Let's go.
Sir. And guys, on that note, if you my generation and you don't want to work 3 jobs, get involved in the process so you can have a say so and control what's going on. And on that note, guys, I am Ratwan Hill. That is Mr. Walter Cotton III. We'll catch y'all next time.